Okay, so we're moving on to the third question, which is this question here. So we're going to install the Windows Workstation operating system, connect it as per the logical network diagram into switch 1 and then join the domain. So I'm going to minimise this out of the road. Matter of fact, I'm going to minimise the whole virtual machine out of the road because we need to install a new virtual machine. So I'm going to go import an appliance. I'm going to do a search on our local drive C for the templates, and there's our Windows 10 sysprept. We're going to open that and go next, and I'm going to call this P Win 10, I think. Let's have a look. We've got it called Workstation actually, so I might change that to Workstation. Workstation, there we go. And I'm going to change the name of its disk image to match, so it's P Workstation.vdi, because that's the format we're using. And I'm changing the primary group that it's in to be the practice assessment group. And I need to change the MAC address so that what it does is it generates a new MAC address for the network card. It's going to import it as a VDI. Remember, we put it as a VDI format. And I'm going to hit the import. And so this will take roughly, I think about 10 or 12%, and then shoot across and be finished. So I'm just going to pause this until it's finished importing this virtual machine. Okay, so this thing's importing. It's currently at 12%. It doesn't have to get to 100%. Which would be another 54 minutes apparently. So it won't be that long, and we'll have finished importing it. Okay, so we've now finished installing our workstation. So I'm just going to make sure that it's plugged into the correct. And when you install any new virtual machine, it always puts it as NAT for its network card. So I need to switch that to being an internal network and switch 1 as per our logical network diagram here. This workstation plugged into there, it's going to get an IP address automatically from the DHCP server on our PDC. Okay, so we're going to go OK on that. I'm going to start this machine up, and we're currently installed it, connected it as per the logical network diagram into switch 1. Now we just need to get it to join the domain. So we'll wait till this thing boots up. There's a little mini setup because this thing was sysprepped, but it doesn't take too long. Okay, it just changed its graphics driver, and we've got the screen tearing, which means we've got the guest editions installed.
I'm gonna go get some lunch.
Okay, so we're just coming up to the mini setup phase. Okay, so we'll go, yes, it's in Australia. Keyboard's correct, go yes. Skip putting in another one. Don't have the internet as yet. Continue with a limited setup. We accept the license agreement. And who's going to use it? This machine was originally set up with a user called Yoda, so I'm going to call this Yoda 2 and go next, and the usual password. And the security questions, which are annoying, but you know, 1, question 2, answer is 2, question 3, answer is 3. And I turn all these things off. And go accept. And not have Cortana. And then it sets things up for us. So it's creating the profile at the moment for Yoda 2. So I'll pause until this is finished and we get a desktop. Okay, so we've got to a desktop. What we need to do is just check to make sure that we've got an IP address and can join the domain, because that's what we need to do for this video. So to get an IP address, let's maybe later. Let's see if we can go. Oof, don't like that. Let's switch that to run CMD. Do an ipconfig/all. And we can see here that we've got an IP address of 192.168.10.100, exactly what we expected. Default gateway of 10.1. The DHCP server, which is 10.3, which is our domain controller, and the DNS server is 10.3, which is also our domain controller. Okay, so I'm going to do a ping www.google.com.au. It name resolves back to an IP address, which means DNS is working. We can't actually ping to Google because we can't ping through the TAFE network. But let's see if I can ping to one of the TAFE servers. So if I ping to 172.25.104.12, and you can see that I can ping to that. You'll see that that was one of the DNS servers, that one there. So we're pinging out to the TAFE network, and it works. Okay, so that's from this machine here going out through our NAT router out to the TAFE network, and we're pinging one of the TAFE servers. Okay, 104.12. So if that's all the case, we've got all the firewalls turned off in our PDC. This thing should be able to join the domain. So the latest version of Windows 10 hides things in a different place to what I was used to. So if I do a right mouse click on this PC and go down to Properties, Advanced System Settings, I think, is where I want to go to. Or maybe it's Rename PC. Yeah, not that one. So let's try Rename PC. Advanced. Yep, okay, so we're here. And you can see the name of this computer is actually an awkward name. So we want to change that back to over here to Workstation. And it's currently in a work group called Workgroup, and we want it to be in a domain. So we're going to hit the change button here, and we can actually do both of these at once. I'm going to call this thing Workstation. And I'm also going to click on Join a Domain and call it vmw.local. And go next. we actually can just use BMW as well. We can use the NetBIOS version of it. So we type in administrator of the domain and the password for that, because that allows us to join the domain. And it says welcome to the domain, and we're going to go OK and close, and it'll want us to do a restart. So we've joined the domain. If we go back to our domain controller and have a look in here, and we're going to look at our tools and go down to Active Directory users and computers. And if we expand that out and look at our domain controllers, and you'll see that PDC, and if we look at computers, we can see that our workstation is in there. The other thing that we want to do to check is if we go to our DHCP server and we expand this out, IP version 4, and we look at the scope and look at the leases in the scope. So there's the scope. Remember, the address pool is between 100 and 200, and our machine got 10.100. So we look at the address leases, you'll see that 10.100 is leased to workstation.bmw.local. So that proves our machine's well and truly in the domain. And we'll just check that by being able to log in another user, log into the domain. So we're going to go administrator. Now, when you do that, you'll notice it switches back to workstation. So there's two ways to fix this. You can just go BMW / at the front, and that switches it back to logging to the domain, or you can do it the other way, where you go at bmw.local, and that also switches it back to the domain as well. So you can log in either way. What we want to do is we want to log into the domain, so we're going to go BMW / like that. We're logging into the domain as the domain administrator, and password 9. And it's going to go, hi, how are you? We're creating a new profile, all that sort of stuff, because the administrator of the domain's never logged into this computer before, so it creates a new profile. But once that's done, we'll just check to make sure that we can see shares on the server, and that we'll know that we're actually into the domain, and that'll be the end of this video. Okay, so we're there. I'm going to open up the File Explorer, File Manager, whatever they call it these days. Look at my network. It says Network Discovery is turned off, so I'm going to turn that on. There's a yellow bar here, and I can turn on Network Discovery. And it sees the PDC, or that's our domain controller over here. So if I double click on that, you'll see all the shares that are currently on it as well, which is, there's only 2 at the moment, which are the standard shares that you have in a domain. Okay, so our Windows 10 workstation machine is a member of the domain. It's getting an IP address from the DHCP server. The other thing that we can check in our domain controller, we've checked that it's got a DHCP address. We've checked that it's in Active Directory users and computers. The other thing we can check is DNS. So if we check DNS, it's coming. Expand out our domain and look at our forward lookup zone and our domain. You'll see that Workstation has put itself its IP address, current IP address, into DNS, which is what it does. So we're 100% sure that our workstation is in the domain, and that ends this video. Ready for the next question.